Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's genealogy program brought to you by the Cook Memorial Public Library District. My name is Daniel Smith, and I am the genealogy librarian. And tonight we are going to be on a quest for our heritage, and we will be introducing HeritageQuest, which is one of the databases provided by Ancestry. So the plan for the evening is, of course, to introduce HeritageQuest, what it is, how to find it and access it, how to navigate and search it, what is available, demonstrate some searching, and then also debut the Life Ancestry Edition game, which will be playable all throughout the summer to celebrate America 250. And of course, at the end, we'll end with questions and your comments. So what exactly is HeritageQuest? HeritageQuest is a comprehensive treasury of American genealogical sources, rich and unique primary sources, local and family histories, those will be very important later, and finding aids. The database provides genealogical and historical sources for more than 60 countries, with coverage dating back as early as the 1700s. And I took that information directly from the site itself. Again, this is one that is powered by Ancestry, so if you use Ancestry, or if you've used Fold3 or newspapers.com or Find a Grave or fill in the blank, there are lots of different sites and databases that are powered by Ancestry. This is just one of their other products that they provide that intersects with some of the others as well. So you'll be able to find some records on HeritageQuest that you may also find on Ancestry or on Fold3 or on newspapers.com or on Find a Grave, etc. And this is one of the databases that is accessible from home with your library card. So if you have a Cook Memorial Public Library District card, or if you're at another public library around the area and they have access to Ancestry, it's likely they probably also have HeritageQuest. And again, that's something that you can access from home. We always like to see you at the library, of course, but we're not open at 3 a.m. in the morning. So if you find yourself researching and wanting to access something that seems to be on Ancestry, it might be worth looking at HeritageQuest just to see if they have what you want. So when it comes to finding and accessing HeritageQuest, you can do that directly from the library's homepage. So if you go to cooklib.org, or if you go to cooklib.org/genealogy, you can get there and access this database. If you choose to go from the library's homepage, you'll select Research, Explore, and then Genealogy. And then on the genealogy page, there's a section just for databases. And if you open that and expand it, you'll see HeritageQuest in the list of databases that are available. That's organized alphabetically, so you'll have to scroll a little bit down the page. But once you find it, you can select it, enter your library card number if you're not here at the library, wait for the homepage to load, and then you can start exploring and searching. So what exactly is on the homepage? Once it loads, you can see it looks very similar to Ancestry. This is something that you'll see across a lot of the products that Ancestry provides is sometimes the searches as well as sort of the way it displays and the results that you get looks very similar. So hopefully this is something that looks familiar to you if you've used Ancestry before. But on the page itself, you can see there's kind of a large area that immediately draws your attention. It says search here. You can search by name, place, or collection, and it's sort of the same options that you get in other databases. So if you're used to searching genealogy databases, this should look very familiar to you. It's likely that you have a name or you at least have a location, and those options are there for you to search. And you can, of course, add additional details if you know those things or if you think they'll be helpful in your searches. I know that oftentimes with my name being Smith, I try to provide as much information as I can, just because I know that the more I provide, hopefully the more accurate sort of relevant results I'll get. In addition to this homepage, you can see the search area. There's also a space for exploring collections, and this is something we'll talk about on another page as well. But these are some of their most popular collections that they have. You can see that they have a census collection. They have city directories. They also have immigration records and cemetery records. They're advertising that they have new obituary collections as well. Now, I want you to also notice at the very top, just to the right of the HeritageQuest by Ancestry logo, you have a few other options. In addition to being on the home page, you can go to a search page, a research aids page, and a maps page, and we'll talk about those a little bit more in depth soon. So say you want to search all the collections. You can do that from the home page, or you can click that search tab. And when you click the search tab, you can see at the very bottom of the screen here that it opens up another way of searching that looks very similar to what you saw on the home page. You can add in as much information as you have, and then to start searching the records. Now, if you start searching from the search page or from the home page, you're going to be exploring the billions of records that are available through HeritageQuest all at one time. So you're going to get, when you search, you're going to get things like census records, you'll get death records, you may get birth records, you may get probate records. There's lots of different records. So as we know, like when you do a really broad search like that, you're going to get lots of different record types. So if that's what you want to do, this is a great place to do that sort of searching and then to see what is out there and available for your ancestors. Again, this is very, very similar to Ancestry. So say you know that you want to search a specific collection. You can start from the homepage like we did earlier. You noticed on the homepage we mentioned that there were a few of the more popular collections like the census collection, or you can go to the search tab to look at the different collections that are available. As you can see here, there are lots of different collections that you can search specifically, and even within each one of those collections, you have the option to further narrow down. So like in the census, you can see you could click on search census, or you could click on, maybe you want to search the 1950 census. So you can click on the link for the 1950 census, and it'll take you to that directly. Right now, I'm giving just a broad overview of the website and the database itself. Just know that I will be giving us a in-depth searching tutorial in a little bit, but I wanted us to kind of get familiar with what it looks like before we start launching into doing the full search. I mentioned earlier that they also have these research aids that are available, and you can navigate to those by using that top menu that was available on the home screen. These research aids, they describe it as follows. Looking to jumpstart your research, the experts at Ancestry have assembled a variety of tips and tricks to get your research moving again. We all know how that goes. Sometimes we get stopped, we get stuck, or we step away from our genealogy. So this is a way of kind of brushing up if you found yourself in one of those situations. Select one of the topics below to help you with your roadblocks. So they have 3 different categories that are available. They have a getting started section, which is really helpful if you are exploring a certain record type for the first time, or if you're just getting started in your genealogy in general. This includes things like search tips, ways that maybe creating timelines might help you in your research, as well as some information about census forms. We'll talk a little bit more about those census forms later, but this is a really helpful guide and resource when you can't really read a census form that you found somewhere. We know that, you can get the actual image on Ancestry or on Family Search or on MyHeritage or fill in the blank. There are lots of different ways that you can get access to a image of a census record. And when you get that access, you can sometimes have a lot of difficulty reading the top areas. And these census forms decipher that for you. Again, I'll show you that in a little bit, but it really makes it clearer and easier to follow those. They also have a dedicated census section, so you can get some information, some historical information about the census, which can kind of give you some context for the certain questions that they ask, why they ask certain questions, and what sort of criteria they were allowed to enter or what they were looking to record in those different times. Because as we know, the census questions change every single time. It's got some information about state censuses, county censuses, non-population schedules, so slave schedules, agricultural schedules, things like that, mortality schedules. They have some information about those. And then if you're looking to go beyond the basics, again, their research aids will help you with cemetery research, what they call the black sheep. So if we're looking for people in our family who may have disappeared because they were shunned by the family for some reason, or if you're also looking into African American research, they have some specific aids and help there for you if you are in that particular vein of research. And then finally, they have a section dedicated to maps. So as we know, the counties that our ancestors lived in probably changed their boundaries and even the name once or twice during their lifetime. So they have a useful little map area that allows you to navigate and understand some of those changes. I know that some of us probably have used the resource that's available through the Newberry Library in Chicago, and this one is not as robust as that, so it doesn't it doesn't show as much detail as that one, but this one can get you started at least to understand how possibly the county boundaries would have changed, which then can give you hints and tips as to where to go look for records. And then after you've looked at the maps, know that they also have even more maps and some photos. So you can see just here's some other instances of what is available on HeritageQuest. These are some of the lesser known things, but I think that are quality and helpful if you are interested in doing this sort of research. I think that the photos that are available through the Library of Congress and the way they make them searchable is really helpful, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Tonight, mostly we're going to focus on US records, but I want to point out that they have records from other locations too. You can see that there. They're, of course, their main focus and their main strength is on US records, but if you are looking in other countries, which most of us are at some point, they have some other resources available here. So you may be asking yourself, well, if HeritageQuest is powered by Ancestry, what's the difference? Why would I want to use HeritageQuest versus Ancestry? Well, again, in addition to being able to access HeritageQuest from home with your library card, there's some other options and some other pros that I think I want to mention to you this evening. So they have many of the same types of records and collections that you would find at Ancestry. In some instances, they have more records. Some of times they have the same amount as Ancestry, or sometimes they have less. So for an example, the US Census, they at HeritageQuest have 300 million images from the census versus 1 billion at Ancestry. Birth records, you can see there's a big difference there. Naturalization records, even larger difference. And with cemetery records, not as big of a difference, but there still is a bit of a difference there. You're probably noticing already that HeritageQuest doesn't have as many records as Ancestry, but again, it does have records that you can access from home. Now, here's one of the ones where it's the exact same. So if you're searching in city directories and you know that that's really where you want to focus your research, you could search at HeritageQuest or Ancestry, and they have the same amount of records available for you to search. Same thing for the Social Security Death Index. Now, here's a big difference. You can see that land records, if you're doing some land record research, HeritageQuest is probably not where you want to go. You want to go directly to Ancestry. Same thing with newspapers. And likely you probably would want to go to newspapers.com, which is also available through the library. Now, this is one of the really big strengths of HeritageQuest, and that is their family and local history books. If you're really wanting to delve into those, if you know of one that might exist for your family or you're just curious, they have over 22,000 available that you can search. And those are unique to HeritageQuest. You wouldn't find those on Ancestry necessarily. So that's a good strength that they offer directly through HeritageQuest. Those are searchable by name, date, keyword, and more. If you want to see the full comparison chart, you can see the link there. There's a QR code. That's kind of what you can see, just a brief comparison chart over there on the right of this screen. And you can get even more, again, by scanning that QR code or following that link, which is also in your handout. I shared the handout toward the beginning of the program tonight, but I will also do that toward the end as well, just so you have some more of this information that you can take home with you and use it when you're doing your research. All right, so now that we've kind of given a broad overview of what HeritageQuest is and how to navigate it, what's available, I thought we'd take a little time and do some searching ourselves so we can get a sense of what is available. So just a moment while I transition my screen here for you. All right, so now we are on the library's homepage here. You can see we're at cooklib.org. And if you want to get to HeritageQuest, we'll hover over Research, then we'll go over to Genealogy. And then once that page loads, we can scroll down a little bit and you can see that there is a database section. If you click on that, it'll expand. And this may be familiar to you, if hopefully familiar if you've used the library's genealogy page before, but we'll just keep scrolling down until we find HeritageQuest. So once we click on HeritageQuest, it'll take us to the home page itself. Now I'm here in the library, so it automatically took me to the home page and didn't ask me to log in with my library card. But if you're at home, and again, that's one of the strengths of HeritageQuest, is you can log in with your library card number and it'll take you to this page. So it's just an extra step, which you likely have seen if you've read our newspapers or used some of the other databases and your research or just in general for reading some of the library resources. So again, here we are on HeritageQuest's homepage. Now on the homepage, we have, again, these tabs where you can search. You can go to the research aids or to the maps. So on the homepage, this is where we get to search billions of records at one time. All we got to do is enter in some information. So I'm going to see if there was a Daniel Smith living in Chicago and let's see, maybe born around 1887. Once I've entered in all the information, I can press search. And you can see here is someone that looks like that might be my person. There's someone, they're born around 1887 and their name's Daniel A. Smith. I may or may not, of course, know what their middle name is or even that it was an A, but this looks promising. And of course, I could just click on it to see the resource itself. But before I do that, I wanted to scroll down and just show you, like you can see here, they're getting lots and lots of census hits. But here's one from Find a Grave, one of the Ancestry's other products. And if you just keep scrolling down and scrolling down, you might find that there's something from an obituary index. Here's something from a marriage index. Here's something for those city directories that we mentioned earlier. So when we do that search from the homepage, we're searching all the records that are available, and that's the way all of our search results show up. They kind of decide what is the most relevant, and you can go from there and sort through all 996. Or, you could use these filters on the left to say, well, I'm really looking only for census records. And if I click in, you can keep going, as you can see, even further. But if I know that I'm looking in the 1900 census, then that's an easy way to get drilled down to that. So here we are again. We're looking at this guy because we think our guy was born around 1887, and this looks like who we want. So we can click on it, and it gives us a lot of the display that we see at Ancestry and other places. It kind of gives you just kind of a digest, an index version. It's gone through and transcribed what it thinks it says on the census record, but we know that it's not always good to rely on just what it says here for two reasons. It may have gotten the information wrong, but also it may not have captured all the information that's available. So it's always a good idea to click on the image itself and then to begin exploring it and seeing what's available. Of course, we can always save it, print it, however you keep your research, but then we can kind of get a sense of looking through and figuring out what other information we might be able to understand just from this record scan. So that is what we could do directly from the homepage itself. So I'm going to go back to the homepage, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the search tab specifically. So first I kind of did a really broad search just to see what's out there about my ancestor, Daniel Smith. But now I'm going to do a more focused search, and I'm going to look here on the search tab page and enter in a bit more information about another ancestor just to see what might be available out there. So I've put in a name and a location. Maybe I'll put in a birth year just to see what happens there. And then I'll press search. Because I put in more information, of course, I'm getting a little less results than I got before. But here I'm getting something from Find a Grave. And of course, I could search Find a Grave directly. But the nice thing about searching a database like HeritageQuest is it's bringing in some other resources as well. So I can keep looking through and seeing if anything else in here looks relevant. And just like we did before, if we find something that we think looks good, we can always click on it. And then might give us an image and it might send us out to another page. You can see it gives us the URL directly, but it also gives you some more information that has likely been captured directly from Find a Grave. If you're into keeping your sources, which I hope that you do somehow keep your sources so that you know where you found something and how to get back to it, it makes it pretty easy right here to capture that information so you can save it for later. And just like we did earlier with the census, we could click on this and it would take us out to Find a Grave, where we could look at more information. As you can see, the good thing is here on HeritageQuest, we got this one image of the grave, but say we'd never seen a picture of our ancestor, then by clicking on that, I was able to get more pictures as well as more information about the family here directly. So it's always a good idea, as we know, to follow those links to look out at the original source if we can. All right, so we've talked a little bit about the homepage and searching from the search tab. I also want to point out ways that you can search specific collections. So earlier we mentioned that on the homepage here, we have the option to explore some of their collections. And we know that there's more than four, but these are the four most popular that they see people using a lot. So they kind of put those right here front and center, knowing that that's where most people are looking when they come to HeritageQuest. But I also want to point out that on the search page, you have lots of other options. As you can see, they have lots and lots of other collections that you can search. Now, say we want to search the census. Hopefully some of you were able to attend the program we had last week on the US Census, or what we called making sense of the census. This is a great way to put into action maybe some of the things that you learned in that program. And if you are interested in watching a recording of that program, you can always reach out to me via email. We do have a recording that we can share with you for a brief time. So say we want to search the census itself. Um, what I can do here, it took me to the homepage for the census collection. And this is where I can enter in the same sort of information that I was entering in earlier. And it will search all the censuses that are available. So 1790 until 1950. Of course, without with the absence of the 1890 census. But you can enter in as much information as you know or that you think you might know. Or if you keep scrolling down, this kind of hides, you can search specific years directly. So you could say, I really know that I want to search the 1940 census. That's where I'm going to find the information that I am looking for. So I'm going to do another search for an ancestor and just to see what might be available out there. Again, I'm targeting directly the 1940 census because I know that I should have an ancestor that's there. This makes me laugh because these are my grandparents, and I don't think my grandfather ever went by Benny, but this is the one I know that is the right one. So I can click on it. If I hover over it, it kind of gives me some information about where they are. But it also, if I click on it, what we can see earlier, like we saw before, is some other information that might be helpful for us in our search. And we can click here and look for the information directly. The nice thing about this is, instead of searching all of the censuses, we can target them and look at them individually by each year. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming if we look at all the years and do a search, or we get a whole bunch of irrelevant search results, especially when you've got a name like Smith, where it's super common and it's going to appear in a lot of places. It might really behoove you to dial into these specific collections to do your searching. Might save you some time and frustration as well. So just wanted to point out that again, on the search tab where we were before, you have the ability to search specific years, and that can save you a lot of time if you're really looking for an ancestor at a certain time when you know that they would be living. I want to point that out just so you can save yourself a little bit of headache in the future, hopefully. Now, I also want to highlight those research aids that I mentioned earlier. That's here on the top of the screen. So we were looking earlier at these getting started ones. You kind of saw a preview of those. And I promised I would show you this census form option. So I'm going to click on that. And what you can see is like this is a transcribed version of what the census forms look like. As we know, like even the very earliest ones were all handwritten. So depending on how well the enumerator wrote, you may or may not be able to read exactly what it says at the top. So this is a really good example of what it should look like. And of course, they had to hand draw everything, so it may be very difficult to read those. But as we know too, as we go further along in the census, they ask more and more and more questions until they don't. But for a long time, they're asking very much a lot of different questions. And as you can see, here we are in 1910. And I probably could flip the page here for us. Just a second. Sorry about that. And you can see that here directly, get a clearer sense of what it should say at the top. So if you found someone in the 1910 census and you're trying your best to figure out what it says at the top, this is a good way to get a sense of what it might be saying. It also kind of gives you some information on the different censuses that are available. So you can see here, it gives you some general information about what's called the 12th census. And it tells you about some of the states that are coming. It may also tell you where it is available on microfilm through the National Archives. It might give you some context too behind the different questions that are being asked in the different years. So it's a good idea to check out these research aids. This is another research aid that's based on the US Census. That gives you a lot of information about why we take census, some information about early census takers, so a lot of context that you would get in those. And you can kind of go and figure out where the copies are at certain areas. You can get an information about the different questions that they asked and some of the context for why they asked those questions and all that sort of information, because we know that sometimes the enumerator was given a lot of training and was able to really hone their craft and accurately report things, but sometimes they weren't given a lot of direction, or they were giving a very long leash and were able to make a lot of different judgments and information recorded. So this kind of gives you a sense of what exactly went into the context for the census. So I encourage you to check out these different research aids because I think they can be really helpful for you in certain instances when you're looking at certain types of records. And as you can see on HeritageQuest, they really have a good strength in the U.S. Census. So hopefully you've done some research already in the U.S. Census. But if you have questions about it or you're unsure about what sort of information you're finding, this might be a good place to go and look and see if it's got some of the information that you're seeking. Now, after I've talked a little bit about those research aids, I want to talk about those maps that I mentioned earlier. So you can see, you can click directly on the different states, or you can use the map to click on it. So of course, we'll click on Illinois. And here in 1800, you can get a sense of this is what Illinois would have looked like, the boundaries that are here, not really the states that we think, the counties that we think about now, but you can see that like there's huge areas for St. Clair County, there's Randolph County, and of course we know that the state itself was kind of settled from the south up, so it's no surprise that we have these smaller counties here that are named, and as we get further, it's either unorganized or it's much larger areas. But I can kind of go through the different years that are available and get a sense of by 1840 the state's looking pretty fixed. But it shows you, here's some, as you can see with the white, you can get a sense of some of the changes that were made or that were coming. These are the modern boundaries, the white ones that are available here. So these are the ones that we recognize now. But you can see LaSalle County used to be a lot larger. Now it's much smaller. They took a part of Marshall County and they took a part of Grundy County, and Kendall County was made partially out of LaSalle and Kane, it looks like. So you can see that like a lot of these boundaries, of course, as we know, have changed. So it gives you a sense of if your ancestor, was living in what you thought was like southwest Kendall County, depending on how long they were living there, they might have found themselves in LaSalle County at some point. So that may be where you have to go and look for the records, depending on the year. So these sort of maps can be really helpful for getting a sense of the different ways that counties have changed. Some states you'll find that there wasn't much change at all, but for some states, there's quite a bit of change. And for Illinois itself, most of it's pretty fixed by a certain point. But if you have ancestors who are here much earlier, it doesn't hurt to give a look at these sort of maps to get a sense of where the records may be held that you're looking for. All right. So now we've talked about how to search from the home page. We've searched from the search page itself, and then we've looked at some of the specific collections that are available. We've also looked at some of the research aids, and we finished up just now looking at the maps. I want to, before we end this sort of demo, also to mention a few of the specific collections that may be helpful for you. So if we go back to the search tab, earlier I mentioned that they have family history books, and these are one of the really solid strengths of HeritageQuest. So I want to search those just so we get a sense of what is available there. On this page, you can search directly by people to see if the person you are looking for is in a specific book, and you can enter in the search information just like you did for the other pages that we were searching. Put in as much information as you have, and it'll try its best to try to find that in a family history book or a place history that's they have loaded. Again, they have over 22,000 of these, so it's possible that you may be able to find an ancestor in one of these, and particularly if they were in an area that produced one of those centennial publications back in the 1870s. Those were super popular, and lots of areas did them. So if your ancestors were in an area for a period of time, they may have appeared in one of those. So it doesn't hurt to check these out. You can search the publications directly, or you can kind of just browse through what's available. This is also an easy way to get to the city directories. So if you have ancestors who live in an urban area and you're curious if they were recorded in a city directory, it wouldn't hurt to give a search here just to see what happens. But I want to search directly for someone in these family history books. So I'm just going to search in, put in Evanston as an area, say I had ancestors who lived there. I'm curious if there's anything about Evanston. And look at there, there's a book called A Classic Town, The Story of Evanston. So I think, well, I'd want to know a little bit more of the history of the town because I know I had ancestors who lived there. I click on it, and on the right, you can just look at the book itself. So if you, this is what it calls the table of contents. So these are the different chapters. And say that you're interested in, the Evanston Waterworks. You had an ancestor who worked there. You can click on that, and then it'll take you directly to the page. And you can just read right here if that's what you're looking for. But if you're looking to search for an ancestor to see if they're mentioned in here, let's say I'm descended from someone named Eliza Garrett, and I know that she lived in Evanston for some time or had something to do with Evanston. I've seen that mentioned somewhere. So I'm going to put that in here and just see what happens when I search. Okay, sure enough, I found 5 different instances where Eliza Garrett is mentioned in this book. And I just click on any of these and say I've never ever seen a depiction of Eliza. Now I have something that's based on a painting of Eliza, and I can get a sense of, what she looked like, and maybe I didn't have that previously. But I also can go back to those search results and look at and see what else is included about my ancestor and read through there and record that information that may be available. So again, these are through the family history books that are available on HeritageQuest. So I encourage you to search those just to see if you can find something about your ancestor there. Finally, I want to show you the photo collection that's available. So we were just searching in these books, but you can see lots and lots of other collections are available. If you continue scrolling down, they got a section called Search Maps and Photos, and then there's one for the Library of Congress photo collection. Now, if you tried to use the Library of Congress's digital collections online, sometimes it can be pretty confusing, and that even includes their other collections of newspapers that are available online. Sometimes it's a little difficult to search or try to figure out what you're seeing there. And Ancestry has created its own sort of search. So they've created their own metadata or information about the different photos that are available and made it a little bit more searchable. And hopefully if you've used things like Chronicling America or other newspaper resources, you know that sometimes the search is different in different places. So it never hurts to give it a try and see if this search will give you different information, especially if you're not finding what you think should exist. So I'm going to just go around here and I'm going to say, maybe I'm looking for something related to Poland. And I know that I had some Polish ancestors that lived in Youngstown, Ohio at some point. Curious to see if there's anything out there about Youngstown and the Polish population that was there. And then I go in search. You can see I found 343 different images that came up. And say you had an ancestor that worked at the Republic Iron and Steel Company. Well, went by a lot of other names too. But you can see if you had maybe you had some Polish ancestors who worked there. Um, they may not show up in a photo. They may, you never know what may be available. But if nothing else, you get a sense of like, look at this huge machine that they would have been using to create metal and steel in the factory. And if you're trying to add some sort of depth or context or more information to your ancestor's life, having a photo like this can really make all the difference. So I encourage you to go in and search those photo collections just because you never know what's available and what's been uploaded. If your ancestor was famous or made history in a variety of ways, you might find that they have several photos that are available here. So I encourage you to give those a try. Let me go ahead and go back to HeritageQuest by Ancestry's homepage, and then I will go ahead and go back to the presentation itself. Just a moment. All right, so if you are looking to learn even more about HeritageQuest, I encourage you to check out the full HeritageQuest guide, and the link is there. It's also going to be in your handout. They have additional quick guides there, some helpful tips. They also have video tutorials, so if you want to watch even something longer or to get a deeper dive into some of the aspects of HeritageQuest, I encourage you to try those out. They also have other things that are available too. Of course, I'm available if you want to contact me by phone or email. You can do that there. Again, if you would like a recording of the U.S. Census program, you're welcome to reach out to me and I can send that to you. But also, if you have specific questions about using HeritageQuest, you are welcome to contact me. And with that sort of information out of the way, what I wanted to share before we go into the questions is something I'm very excited about. This summer, we're going to play Life Ancestry Edition. If you've ever played the game of life, it's kind of a fun way of going through life and collecting, of course, lots of money, depending on what your career is, but you make different decisions. And of course, as you spin the wheel, you encounter things like getting married, having children, and other things like that, getting sued, and things that happen throughout life. But I think that it's a way that mirrors some of the things that we look for in genealogy, too. A lot of our ancestors, of course, may have found themselves in court for some reason or another. It could have just been that they bought some land, but there may be other reasons that they may appear there. They may have appeared in a newspaper. They may, of course, have a birth record or a marriage record or things like that. And these are all things that kind of collected throughout the course of their lives. And I would like for us, hopefully, to have some fun playing those and learning more about our ancestors, but in the process, learning a little bit more about U.S. history as we celebrate America 250. So it's likely that if you've been doing genealogy for a while, you may be able to collect the records pretty quickly. You may already have the records themselves already, but I encourage you that it's likely that you haven't collected all the records for all of your ancestors. So use this as a challenge to find those different birth records or marriage records or death records or school records or military records. You'll see on the life game board that I show you in a second, there's a lot of different options that you'll be able to choose from. And at the very end, if you complete, you'll be able to enter in to win some family history prizes that are available. And if nothing else, you'll get a button, a special button that was created just for those who play the game here. So I encourage you to stop by the information desk starting on June 1st to pick up one of those packets. And just to get a sense of how to play, we'll be moving one square at a time. Each square represents a significant life event for one of your ancestors. And the idea is that you'll find a record to satisfy the life events, and there'll be questions associated with that. There are just 10 that you would choose from, and you get to even choose a different path for your ancestor. So you can see uh, your ancestor is born. Of course, that means go and find a birth record for any ancestor. It can be a direct ancestor or a collateral ancestor, an aunt, uncle, cousin, something like that. Because as we know, finding records for people outside of our direct line can sometimes be super beneficial for finding information that we've been looking for. But now, after your ancestor has joined a community, maybe you found an organizational record. So they've joined a church, or they've joined a synagogue, or maybe they've joined a fraternity, a fraternal organization, something like that. Then you have the choice of, are they going to school or are they going to immigrate to the United States? And you can kind of see, you can go around. And the idea, again, is to collect 10 and then answer questions and then turn them in and again be entered in to win prizes. So I hope that you'll have fun navigating this game board, and just kind of a fun way to celebrate America 250, learn more about your ancestors, and be a part of the library's genealogy community. Again, stop by the library to pick up one of these packets. The packets themselves, in addition to the game board, have more helpful information about the different record types, but also ways to play the game and some FAQs and things like that. Hopefully that will be helpful for you as you do your research. So now it's time for questions or comments, and I encourage you to either use the chat or the Q&A to ask any part of questions or comments that you may have. If you've used HeritageQuest, I'd love to hear your thoughts too, and we can share those with others as well. So again, if you have questions, comments, the chat is available, Q&A is open. I encourage you to use one or both of those, and I'll look forward to receiving those. While you do that, I'll go ahead and share the handout with everyone, again, just so you have that available for you. So you have some of the links and the information that was shared in the demo itself. Do folks have any questions? Any sort of comments, anything of that nature? Yeah. I had a question about what I would consider the strength of using HeritageQuest instead of Ancestry. I think that there's two things. Again, it's a place to go and search if you are looking for information that you think might be on Ancestry, but say you don't have access to the library right now. It's a great place to come and search when the library is closed or if you're not able to get to the library. And I think the other strength for them is those family history and local history books that are available, which are not necessarily on Ancestry itself. So those are two great reasons to try out using HeritageQuest. And of course, as we saw in the comparison chart, which again is in your handout, you also have a lot of the same collections and records are available in both places. So I encourage you to just give it a try and see if it's available. I could save you a trip to the library, not that we don't like to see you, but it's something to give a try because it could be that it's available. Another person asks, what is Fold 3? Fold 3 is another database available through the library powered by Ancestry, and it's really a great place to go and search for military records. So if you have an ancestor who either fought in some sort of conflict that was involved in the United States or across the world, or if they, as we know, some people, of course, had to fill out draft cards, may have never fought necessarily, or they may somehow be related to the military, even though they didn't necessarily serve in any capacity. But it's a great place to go search for military records that are available. They have a really solid strength in Revolutionary War records, particularly, but they have stuff for all the other uh, conflicts and wars that the U.S. has been involved in, as well as, again, across the world. So it's a great place to go search for those military records to see if there's anything for your ancestor. If all else fails, we know that going to NARA, so in the National Archives, and placing a request can be very helpful for getting information, particularly for the newer sort of wars. Fold 3 may have some information about your World War II or Korean War or Vietnam War ancestors, but it's not as likely to have as much information just because those folks could still very much be alive. So they somewhat limit what you can find there. It may be something that you have to request through the National Archives. but there is still a lot available on Fold 3, so it's worth a try to look for those military records there. If you're like me, I know that sometimes I think of a question later or while after I start using something. I didn't realize I had a question until then. Again, my information is in the handout and was a part of this presentation. So I do encourage you to reach out if you do have those questions later. Happy to answer them. I did see a comment. I'm glad that this was helpful for folks. And I'm glad that you were able to take a little bit of time out of your evening to spend and learn a little bit more about HeritageQuest. Again, we know that we have a lot of places to search when we do genealogy, so this is just another tool to put in your toolbox, another place to search to see if a record is available. And I hope that you will give HeritageQuest a try. I think that there are things there that may be helpful for you in your research. And we're here at the library for you whenever you do have questions, and I'll look forward to seeing you at future genealogy programs and around the library too. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great night.